This week on Christian World News, a forgotten war that still rages on. We go to the front lines of the battle with the Christian ministry that's bringing hope to those who refuse to leave their homes. Plus, did Jesus preach here? We take you to Galilee to see an ancient synagogue that sits on the path traveled by Christ and his disciples. And in Ireland, churches knocked down, seminaries abandoned. What has happened to the land once called the most Catholic country in the world? And who is rising up to save it? Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Christian World News. I'm George Thomas. It's a forgotten war. Despite a ceasefire signed 5 years ago, fighting rages between soldiers in eastern Ukraine and Russian-backed fighters trying to seize their land. Those living on the front lines have been ravaged and continue to suffer, hanging on to hope. Earlier this year, I traveled to the war zone for this exclusive report. This is what's left of houses near the frontline town of Zolote. By midday Tuesday, February 18th, 2,300 explosions rocked the area as Ukrainian troops and Russian-backed separatist forces clashed in some of their fiercest fighting. Alexander Kornev was in his house when the first series of explosions went off.
I had just turned around and then there was a boom. I was thrown back to the steps. I was lying down for 20 minutes.
Ukraine said Russian fighters attempted to advance across the separatist line into Zolote, but were repelled.
We have a powerful army. Provocations happen. The army responded firmly.
CBN News journeyed 90 miles south from Zolote to another battle-scarred village. Numerous Ukrainian checkpoints meant we were getting close to the front lines. Traveling with us, Sergei Rakuba, who grew up in this region of Ukraine.
We're in the village of Opetna, which was a vibrant, dynamic community before the war started between Russia and Ukraine. And the front line is basically separating this village in half.
Rakuba, joined by a team from the Mennonite Brethren Church, delivered food, water, and other essentials to families and soldiers living in Opetnaya. February 2014, Russian so-called separatists launched a massive hybrid war into this part of eastern Ukraine, in essence taking a chunk of the country. 6 years later, communities like this one are a ghost town, except for a few families who have lived here for most of their lives and who vow never to leave. Once home to 700 people, only 60 now live in Opetnaya. There's been no electricity, gas, or running water for more than 5 years. The streets here lined with bullet-scarred homes, the majority of houses unlivable.
But we know that even here, God is here, and people need to know the hope of God that he brings, the salvation. And so, again, a special privilege to be able to pass out gifts, hand out food, and pray with people, and just share the love of Christ.
Rakuba and Wiebe climbed the steps of a bombed-out apartment building carrying supplies.
They have no light for the last 5 years. Come on in, guys.
The 78-year-old Lida. She lives in this tiny room with her son and 4 cats. No heat, no water, very little food.
But there is no place to go for me. There is nobody, I can go to. And I'm staying here, I'm just waiting. I lived here for 50 years, and I will stay here.
Pro-Russian rebels control half her village and much of eastern Ukraine, including key cities of Donetsk and Luhansk.
They still hear shooting, farther there. At least once a day, once every 2 days, they still hear shooting.
14,000 people lost their lives in this region, half since Russia and Ukraine signed an agreement to end the war 5 years ago. 30,000 have been wounded and nearly 2 million people displaced from their homes. Rakuba says it's a forgotten war, and it weighs on him.
My teenage years and youth were spent here in the towns of eastern Ukraine. I remember how difficult it was for a Christian at that time to share one's faith, and in general for the church to be of influence in Soviet society. The war over the past few years has added even more darkness.
So why don't we pray? We'll pray in Russian if you don't mind.
Rakuba, a native of Ukraine, now lives in the U.S. and heads Mission Eurasia, a Tennessee-based group training young people to transform the countries of the former Soviet Union for Jesus Christ.
Our vision at Mission Eurasia is to bring hope to society through young leaders and now bring the gospel to the next generation and to those living through difficult situations like in eastern Ukraine.
Hundreds of Mission Eurasia leaders and volunteers recently crisscrossed the war zone and countries of the former Soviet Union, delivering 120,000 Gift of Hope boxes to children. CBN News was there as dozens of youngsters met in this church basement to pack boxes.
This is so exciting to see so many young people are working on this project, and this is just one of the packing and distribution locations.
Several teams fanned out across towns and villages near the conflict zone, holding evangelistic outreaches geared to reaching young people, many hearing the gospel presentation for the very first time.
I learned Jesus can help me in many difficult moments and help me not to give up.
Each event ending with boxes of hope given to hundreds of children, each containing toys, school supplies, a Christian kids magazine called Spark, and a children's storybook Bible. Once the kids get back to their apartments, they're obviously excited about rummaging through their gifts and looking at all the various things that they got. Incidentally, the Bible, along with the Spark magazine and each shoebox, has this QR code on the back, so they can use their smartphone, scan the code, and within seconds they will have access to all the various local churches that they can get plugged into. Canada-based Sherwood Global partnered with Mission Eurasia to distribute the Spark magazine and place QR codes on each box, linked to our Bible app, with loads of information for kids and parents.
The Bible app includes multiple languages in different translations of the Bible, and there's over 200 languages that are in audio as well.
Rakuba says every Gift of Hope box placed in a child's hands is a chance to introduce the love of Jesus and impact families in a war zone.
The boxes symbolize the future with Christ, and when put into the hands of children, they take them home. They and their families will realize that there's hope in God, hope in Jesus.
Up next, we take you to an ancient synagogue and to a time and place where Jesus and his disciples carried out their ministry. That story in a moment.
These are times of warfare. You go into the strong tower when you're under attack.
CBN presents The Name of God, the latest teaching by Gordon Robertson.
God has given you the right to carry his name. That is life-changing.
Discover the peace, healing, provision, and protection that can be found in the Lord's name. Plus,
You're going to see some tremendous real-life stories of people who have seen firsthand what trusting in the name of God can do.
The thought of losing Noah was one of the most terrifying things I've ever walked through.
I could hear my house being shredded, and I heard my wife screaming over the phone.
I knew that God didn't lie to me. I knew that God didn't forget about me.
This is God's promise. This is the way. This is the answer. Go into that strong tower.
get your DVD copy of The Name of God today. Call now or go to CBN.com.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30. As the world watches from the outside,
it's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline, Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Welcome back to the broadcast. Israel is closed to tourists due to the coronavirus. So we're taking you to the Holy Land to see one of the latest discoveries there. It's a major find in the Galilee region that, wow, it provides a very colorful picture of what life at the time of Jesus was like. CBN's Scott Ross reports from Magdala, the city many believe was the home of Mary Magdalene.
Located on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee, Magdala sits at a crossroad of Jewish and Christian history.
Magdala is very significant already just in general culture. One of the most known figures of Christian discipleship is Mary of Magdala. What's the importance of Magdala for the Jewish people? It's a first century town and a very significant excavation in the first century for the Jewish culture.
In 2005, Father Juan Solana initiated the Magdala Project to highlight the ministry of Jesus and an opportunity to honor women of faith. They broke ground in 2009, and what happened next, Father Eamon Kelly describes as providence.
We bought this piece of land, and then to find it in Magdala, the land, and not just on any hill around the Sea of Galilee. And then you start digging with two prayers. Lord, spare us from archaeology, because it's an expensive hobby, and then a big delay for all the project. The second prayer was, if you do give us archaeology, give us something good. And so we find this incredible discovery of a first-century synagogue.
Seated in the synagogue, Father Kelly told me about some of the features that make it so amazing.
So we're in a very big room, and we see it's organized with 2 rows of seating here in the central part, and we have another row of seating inside the outer walls. This is a space that's not a family home. It's a very ornate community room that has this mosaic and the frescoes, and the mosaic has 2 parts, the rosette mosaic with the 3 colors, but now the specialists are telling us there are 26 colors in the mosaic, and then we have the unending pattern, which shocks some people, but they say this was also in the temple in Jerusalem. And then we have the Magdala stone right bang here. This is the place where we found it. Now, this and the one out there are copies. It's considered and treasured by many archaeologists on the level of the Dead Sea Scrolls in terms of archaeological importance.
Archaeologist Moti Aviam proposed the theory of the Magdala stone, resembling the second temple of Jesus' day.
And I suggested that what we have here is some kind of a model, symbolic of the temple in Jerusalem. We have the menorah, we have the altar, the golden altar, we have the showbread table, and we have a scene into the Holy of Holies.
Because of the commandment against graven images, Aviam says the choice was to portray God symbolically in a divine chariot.
As it is in the book of Zechariah and many other books from the Second Temple period, which gives us a description of the chariot on which God is riding.
So what is the significance then of Magdala, going back in biblical history?
Magdala today gives the largest view, archaeologically, of the time of Jesus.
While there's no physical evidence that Jesus visited Magdala, Father Kelly says the signs are there.
Scott, every day, every group asks me this question, was Jesus here? Was he in this synagogue? Was he in Magdala? And I say, we don't know because we lost all the videos. Jesus was surely present in Galilee, and this is on the path from Nazareth to Capernaum. There's a port here, and he's always crossing the lake. This is a Mecca for the Galilean Sea and fishermen.
At Magdala, the Duke Al-Azam Center is a place for people of different faiths to worship. Its Latin name is taken from Luke, where Jesus tells Peter to launch into the deep. The atrium is designed to honor the Jewish women who followed Jesus in the New Testament. 4 smaller chapels include mosaics illustrating biblical events. And in the boat chapel, a unique boat-shaped altar overlooks the Sea of Galilee.
When the gospel is proclaimed up there at the microphone, it looks like Jesus is preaching again to us from the boat. Imagine you're having liturgy here, prayer, and the boats are going by. It allows people to get into the moment of the gospel happenings.
And downstairs is the Encounter Chapel, where Father Kelly says he believes God is healing divisions between Christians and the Jewish community.
This is part of the road of the first century port. So you know the names of many first century fishermen? So who walked on this street?
Yes.
Now, if Jesus came to Magdala, I say he was more often on this street than he was in the synagogue, in our synagogue.
Magdala is staffed in part by international volunteers.
Sometimes you realize you know very little of your faith, so this helps you to go deeper inside and really to live all the things that you can find out in Israel.
I never been in Holy Land before, so it was taking a huge risk. It was very surprising to see what we think about Israel, the Holy Land, and coming here and seeing the reality.
And that guest house for pilgrims? It opened just recently. What's the vision for the future now?
We had to make quite a few adjustments because of the archaeological discoveries, which enriched the site immensely, enriched it with meaning. And then by finding a synagogue, a huge increase of the Jewish-Christian dialogue, and also the Christian-to-Christian encounter, because here we have a place where we were not divided. So where Providence is going to continue taking this in the future, I think we'll all be surprised, as we are every day.
Scott Ross for CBN at Magdala in the Galilee, Israel.
Thank you, Scott. Coming up, it's known as the most Catholic country on the earth. So why is Ireland becoming hostile to Christianity? And who's stepping up to save it? We'll tell you in a moment.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody.
That could be the next step in this escalating fight.
Jenna Browder.
Robert Mueller chose his words carefully.
Ben Kennedy.
He's asking Christians to get the word out.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
Get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation. Weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
The Name of God, a new teaching from Gordon Robertson.
The name of the Lord is a strong tower.
Gain important insights into the protection available to you in the name of God. Discover how God is our healer, our provider, and the one who gives us peace. Plus, see exciting true stories of God's providence in the lives of real people.
You get the answer to everything, and that answer will never leave you.
The Name of God, available now.
Welcome back to the broadcast. Ireland was once a nation where almost everyone went to church. Now, in parts of that country, almost no one does. So what happened? Dale Hurd reports from Dublin on Ireland's Christian legacy and why it isn't over yet.
If there's a symbol of what happened to faith in Ireland, it might be this: the Church of the Annunciation just outside of Dublin. It's one of the largest church buildings in Ireland, and it's about to be knocked down because so few people attend services. Anyone in Ireland over 50 can still remember a nation where almost everyone went to church, but today live in a nation where in some areas almost no one goes to church.
The Christian faith that has dominated Ireland for centuries died with surprising speed. And as one leader put it, today for the Irish, God has become irrelevant.
They not only walked away from the church, they legalized same-sex marriage, abortion, and elected an openly gay prime minister. Nick Park heads Ireland's Evangelical Alliance.
It was very much a cultural religion. Well, they were Catholic because they were Irish, and the two were seen as synonymous.
We were very arrogant as a church.
Paddy Monaghan helps lead the Evangelical Catholic Initiative.
Sadly, it's taken the two referendums that we both lost, one on same-sex marriage, one on abortion, to bring home to the Catholic Church in Ireland that they're now a minority church.
Church buildings abandoned, Some Catholic seminaries almost empty. One clergyman wrote that the battle for faith in Ireland has been lost. But a new church is rising. This is the largest church in Ireland, and it is Romanian Pentecostal. The worshippers at Betania or Bethany Church came to Ireland to find work, but now realize they were sent to Ireland as missionaries. Betania Church is exploding. It's building a new $5.5 million facility on faith, one that will accommodate 1,500 worshippers. I met two of its pastors at the construction site.
We're praying for this country, we're fasting for this country, and I think God has a plan with us to be a blessing for this country and more people to know God and to be saved in this country. Because God loves Ireland.
Now we realized God has a greater plan, a bigger purpose for our lives, to deliver His message and His kingdom works for this country.
In fact, the second largest church in Ireland is also Romanian Pentecostal. Betania pastor Georgia remembers when nations like Ireland sent Bibles to communist Romania.
And those Bibles are coming back now.
African churches are also growing. The Nigerian Redeemed Christian Church of God has grown to more than 100 churches in Ireland with several thousand members. And even though most Irish have rejected the institutional church, polls show many still believe the core of the gospel.
Among Irish youth, I think it's something like 70% of them said they really believed Jesus rose from the dead. They really believed in heaven and hell. They really believed that Jesus was the incarnate Son of God. So you've still got these very high rates of belief in the facts of the gospel.
When we were choked by religion and institutionalism, there wasn't much life. But now that we have those institutions crumbling, I think that we're in the land of opportunity.
Monahan says the Spirit is moving in some Catholic churches as well.
Do know there's a spiritual awakening happening in this country. And some parish priests are really becoming born again, filled with the Holy Spirit and getting a vision for what's possible. There's that spiritual heritage within this nation that I believe the enemy, Satan, wants to destroy. But I believe it's going to happen again.
Ireland, once a mission field, then a base for missions, has become a mission field again.
So we are seeing such an explosion of Christianity, but I believe the gifts and callings of God are without repentance. And Ireland still has a call to be a missionary sending nation, and I believe Ireland will fulfill that role again.
Dale Hurd, CBN News, Dublin.
Remember, you can find many more of our stories about the church around the world at our Christian World News webpage. Find it at cbnnews.com. We'll be back right after this.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Some trust in chariots. Some trust in horses. But we will trust in the name of the Lord our God. CBN presents the name of God. Jehovah Shalom.
The Lord is our peace.
Jehovah Yireh.
The Lord will provide.
Jehovah Shammah.
The Lord is there.
Jehovah Rapha.
The Lord who heals.
Jehovah Sidkenu.
The Lord our righteousness.
You'll be encouraged by Gordon Robertson's teaching on the name of God.
God has given you the right to carry His name.
Plus, you'll see exciting true stories of God's providence in the lives of real people.
I could hear my house being shredded when I heard my wife screaming.
I knew something was seriously wrong with him, and it was worse than we had thought.
Become a CBN partner and get your copy of The Name of God. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com.
Welcome back to the broadcast. The iconic jeepneys that usually run through the city streets of the Philippines are sitting idle because passengers are staying home. However, the drivers, sometimes along with their children, are still out on the streets begging for food and help. CBN's Lucille Talusan reports from Manila on how Operation Blessing is helping them in their struggle to survive.
While other kids are in the comfort of their homes during the COVID-19 pandemic, 11-year-old Cedi Sebastian is out in the streets begging for money to buy food.
I pity my father because he cannot work. We don't have food to eat. That's why I beg so we can have money to buy rice, food, and milk for my sister.
Cedi's father is among the thousands of jeepney drivers who are struggling financially after they lost their jobs when the Philippine government imposed a coronavirus lockdown in March.
It hurts to see my son begging, but I can't stop him. He tells me just to stand nearby so I can quickly come to him when the policeman tries to arrest him.
Although some routes have recently been opened, allowing 6,000 drivers to operate, this is only a small fraction of the more than 50,000 jeepneys that used to fill the streets of Metro Manila.
I have to keep my face mask on so that I will not get fined for $100. Behind me are the jobless jeepney drivers, and they have resorted to begging for food and money out here in the streets. Most of them have been evicted from their rented places because they don't have money to pay the rent. So now they have to endure the discomforts of living in the jeepney as their home.
We live here since the lockdown. It's very difficult, especially for our children. There's a lot of mosquitoes and it's very hot. I appeal to the authorities to open our routes so we can earn again because it's been 4 months now that we don't have income.
Like the rest of the drivers, Nilo Malibiran is frustrated over his family's miserable condition.
It is making me cry to see my family suffer. I want to buy them many things, but I don't have money. Our son got sick and I don't have money to buy his medicines and buy him milk. It's so frustrating.
To alleviate their suffering, Operation Blessing reached out to the jeepney drivers and gave them food bags that contained rice, canned goods, noodles, cereal, coffee, and other basic needs.
Thank you for everything you gave us. This is really a big help because we can't buy those things.
I am very happy with everything that Operation Blessing has given us. It's a lot. Now we have plenty of food to eat. I don't have to beg. Thank you so much.
A volunteer pastor of Operation Blessing gathered the jeepney drivers to share with them the message of salvation through Christ. He prayed for their faith to be strengthened as they wait for the day that they can drive their jeepneys in the streets again. Lucille Talusan, CBN News, Manila.
Thanks for joining us this week. Until next week, goodbye and God bless.